to a solo review of the Ferris Bueller video, which was an expanded breakdown in response to a request from user Leslie M84, a user in the community from YouTube. I am Lippin, hosting what is hopefully offering further insight on the underlying spiritual implications or otherwise misunderstood principles behind the film Ferris Bueller's Day Off, as interpreted by Joey Phipps of Library of The Untold, which is our older sibling channel on YouTube, who gave rise to our atrium, which is meant to echo the lost and forgotten voices of ancient history, and restore and explore the knowledge of our untold past. Today, through the lens of John Hughes cinema. Let's get right into it then, shall we?
Leslie M84, thank you for being part of the community. You sent me a $10 super thanks and requested that I go into more detail about my breakdown of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which I only dabbled in the, I guess it was the Metaphors of Inner Light video. But I'll let you know that there is a reason for this goofy ass shit right here to be on my bookshelf, and it doesn't belong. And sometimes it's funny because people browsing my bookshelf will come across this VHS tape. I don't have a VHS player, but this to me forever.
Uh,
Ferris Bueller.
I don't know if you guys caught it right there. Real quick, I just want to mention he has that smiley sticker there that has the "Be kind and please rewind" message, which to me indicates that way back when a young Joey strolled into the Blockbuster and or maybe a Big Planet, depending on where you're from, and snagged himself a little Ferris Bueller's Day Off video rental and forgot to return his video. um, isn't that a funny little gem?
Bueller's Day Off belongs up here on the bookshelf, right between Friedrich Nietzsche and Carl Jung. And there's a damn good reason for it. Because many of you guys have seen Fight Club, and you find out in the end that he was the same person, and he had pressed down that portion of his psyche so much that it came spilling over in the form of Tyler Durden as he began to go into his psychosis, as he couldn't handle that dark night of the soul that he was experiencing. The psychosis came up, and he created a character who essentially was him but was not him. Now, what a lot of people don't realize, what is so special, what is so beautiful about this movie.
So I'd like to point out real quick, there are many cinephiles with their own channels or who are fans of these channels, who postulate or who have postulated that there is indeed this sort of psychological flip in Ferris Bueller, and that it begins and ends with Cameron, right? And that it is a mind flip on the audience, but uh, that it's just Cameron's story, But Joey he's gonna make the case here that it goes well beyond that, and it's not really obvious how he's about to make that case here. That's a kind of a wild trip for those who are not already familiar with seeing through a Gnostic lens, or more significantly, in this case, a Campbellian lens, Joseph Campbell, because what he does so proficiently, Campbell, is he draws together mythos and literary constructs of archetype so demonstrably it can't be argued with. And cinema being just one um, artifice by which this universal archetypal substrate is tapped, it's the storyteller's responsibility since time immemorial to sort of tap into this. And Campbell points this out. And the case Joey's going to make sort of draws heavily upon those principles.
Is that they don't come flat out with it and just right out tell you in the end that they were the same person. It's completely up to you to learn this by watching this movie. Some people watch the movie and they have a few laughs and they have a good time, but like a lot of movies of this type of genre, especially back then, they really knew what they were doing. Movies like the Marvel movies and stuff now are really good, but back in the 90s, there was hidden messages in movies like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So I
It would be a bit of a sin of me to not sort of chime in on behalf of all the Marvel fans out there, and I am thinking of you, Nico, if you're listening. um, it does need to be sort of voiced that a lot of the modern movies and the Marvel movies today do indeed pack a decent esoteric punch. They are sort of riddled with underlying themes of Gnostic or otherwise types of esoteric uh, Easter eggs, right? Meant for our eyes, but not really actually, not just meant for our eyes, really meant for the eyes of the new generation coming up. Because they're gonna grow into an understanding of it as we have, in their own way and in their own time, and they'll have had that seed planted in them by these Marvel films. I even just saw Venom 3 just recently, and there's a really brief moment in there where one of these dudes, he goes, what does he say? He says something along the lines of like, there's this phenomenal realm to which this perception behind the eyes is capable of accessing, and we don't understand it, and this and that, and I was like, there it is. Everything, almost everything has to have some esoteric injection, some Easter egg in there, um, pointing in the direction of sort of unlocking this hidden doorway that we don't usually conventionally understand even is there, because esotericism is the shadow of all the surface level understanding of this world. And anyway, not to stray too far off there, real quick, but I did want to, I did, uh, I would like to sort of represent people, uh, those who are fond of modern cinema, as it were. But we'll allow Joey to continue here.
I keep that on my bookshelf. And here's the breakdown. Ferris Bueller doesn't necessarily exist and Cameron doesn't necessarily exist. You get to pick which one of those characters actually objectively exists, because the character, the protagonist in the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off, is you. Now, there's two sides of the psyche here. We notice in the beginning of the movie, Cameron is bedridden, he's sick. And you notice you'll never actually see Cameron's family. This is interesting, it's where we get to later. And then you show Ferris Bueller's Day, Ferris, who is faking being sick. It's because he gets up and he sees the blue sky and he just wants to celebrate being alive. He gets the girl, he gets the grades, and no matter who's out there trying to get him, he seems to aloof, like Bugs Bunny, just always seem to overpower effortlessly through this form of Wu Wei any obstacles that come his way. Whereas with Cameron, he just could stub his toe and he freaks out. Nothing goes right for Cameron. This is a metaphor for how you wake up in the morning. You notice they both are in bed at the beginning of the movie. That's how both characters wake up. It's just one character being you, and you decide when you wake up which character you're going to be. Are you going to be Ferris Bueller, or are you going to be Cameron? What you have to realize is that they're both kind of living a lie. They're both lying. Well, one Cameron is lying to himself.
So I do want to. There's a lot to unpack here already. Between his sort of calling him out as a trickster deity here, uh, this waking up in the morning. Indeed, Ferris is a sort of trickster angel, really, and the scheming half of that same individual. To consider Ferris and Cameron a single individual, if you were to liken it to Fight Club as he did, uh, that individual really being us, the audience member, um, essentially we're invited to assume the role of Ferris, and it happens that we are actually Ferris, Cameron, the principal, or the parents. Uh, we're the parents, especially when we grow up, right? But we are any of these things depending on the context of our own lives at any given time with relationship to the film. And then to let the film take us on this ride is indeed to let Ferris sort of pull the sticks out of our asses, so to speak, right? Which is how this is his superpower, where he wouldn't be able to get away with everything like he's saying here, uh, were this not the case. Because if he couldn't pull the sticks out of our asses, he wouldn't get away with it. The archons would overwhelm him by rule of force, right? And so, because he forces you to cease that momentous train. And the reason why is because anybody who's allowing him to get away with anything are successfully stopping that train to get off of the momentum and smell that fragrance that he offers. And this is gonna cycle back his way in good sort of within as without fashion, in good sort of trickster deity fashion. Um, what he gives is what he gets back. It's gonna get reciprocated back his way because the fragrance of life he brings allows others to pull their masks off, and he's rewarded for this quite greatly, right? You'll see.
Is lying about his persona. This is where the important drift comes to be between these two archetypal characters. Some highlights in the movie are such, right? Uh, Ferris is not meant to be caught skipping school, but he trusts the universe so much that he gets up on a parade float and then falls backwards, and then they catch him. This was not planned. I mean, it was scripted in the movie, but part of the movie, it wasn't planned. It's just a metaphor of him trusting the universe. And he was on a parade float in like Times Square or some shit like that, dancing and singing, while Cameron, looking up at this, was freaking out, saying, "Dude, you're gonna get busted. You're gonna get busted." He was literally in fear of getting busted himself because of Ferris doing something irresponsible. Yet nothing bad ever happens to Ferris Bueller. That's because he decided that. Whenever he woke up in the morning, of course, it's not correct to deceive people into thinking you're sick and whatnot, but you have to look at the agenda that drives Ferris Bueller's reason for skipping school. The fact of the matter is, that's a little hidden portion of the movie that I picked up when I was a kid. School is bullshit. It's an indoctrination system. That archetype is perfectly embodied by the principal character, the guy who is also in a rage, constantly trying to keep everything under control. The principal is running around making sure that everything is tight knit. And there's that scene where he's running, trying to catch Ferris. Then he walks as soon as he gets past that the classroom window. Then he runs again. So he wants to appear a certain way, but he wants to freak out when the moment comes. And every time he does, it backfires on him. He tries sneaking in.
So, before getting too much more deeply into this here, I do want to target in on what he was saying before about the way one wakes up in the morning, right? It does set the tone for the day. And I've always said this, and I hope this isn't, straying too off course. But it's these small actions of waking up with the sun, waking up with intention, right? And there is no correct intention, but simply to have one, yeah? And then to proceed to take care of one's body and participate, make use of that vessel and participate in the various artifices of social life. This is what I would call as, the true doctrine, really, the true paradigm, the true embodiment or manifestation, whatever the mouth noise we prefer, right? But these are sort of like the true testaments, yeah, because this body and what it houses is the temple, and to preserve this temple, this tabernacle, as it were, is to also preserve the soul which embodies it. So, this waking up with the sun, going to sleep with the moon, and living actively in the ongoings between, yada yada. This can actually become that momentous train of daily life. But what you want is for that momentous train to surrender to these small actions, right? And when it doesn't, right, that's when we're sort of betraying those most sanctimonious qualities offered us by the most subtle of internal spaces. And when they get ignored, the trappings of society begin to consume us. When we deal with a home environment we don't like, a school environment, a work environment we don't like, and we know it's all a lie, uh, that's the choice to be Cameron in the morning, right? Or that gives motivation to choose to be Cameron in the morning, and to choose to be Cameron is itself an acknowledgement, right, of these paradigmatic failures, because it's one's reluctance to participate in them, uh, and it's no wonder why one doesn't want to get up in the morning, look at the masks we're sort of forced to wear in order to participate in society to begin with. Yeah. But Ferris, being the trickster that he is, sort of forces the society around him to take its mask off in his presence, as if to say he's some kind of like antidote to which the social masks of society are allergic, even if they don't realize it, right? Like the principal with his fixings to bring Ferris to his knees, right? To bring him down. So the mask of the principal is taken off. And then the real face of the tyrant behind that mask is revealed for what it truly is. And it's not his aim to procure learning in Ferris, as much as it is to procure subservience and submission to authority and systems of control. The principal representative of that initial authority character, in the coming of age chapter of the hero's journey. And yeah, I mean, you might also say that the moment where he's singing the Beatles at the Floaters, it's this culminating point in which the film embodies his ability to do this at full will, right? Full manifestation, full effect, with the entire on-screen populace having a blast on his behalf. uh, and of course, this underscores the going motif of most of Hughes's movies, right? Breakfast Club being the most popular among them. That it's that motif of high schoolers growing up in the post counterculture decades, post counterculture society, who are at least in the environment of a narrowing of the mind of the common student all the way up until today, really, to a particular resolution of academic competency where you get the emergence of particular archetypes like the outcast girl or the rabble rousing rebel or the Joker or Uncle Buck, who have either attempted to or successfully broken the bounds of these prison like systems, these structures of social control established for the sake of control of perception and behavior. Uh, it's definitely a common storytelling motif to emerge from the principles of these films' cinematic author. Yeah, shall we allow him to proceed?
Into Ferris's house. He steps in the mud. Every time he does something to try to take down Ferris, who trusts the universe in his core, something bad happens to him. However, nothing necessarily bad ever happens to Cameron. The bad things that happen to Cameron are always self-inflicted. This is metaphorically personified perfectly by the car scene whenever it is made apparent that Cameron is very afraid of his father, whereas Ferris has a loving father. And Ferris's father says, "Wrap a hot towel around your head." And Ferris goes, "Wrap a hot towel around my head?" And it's the perfect little bit to show you that it makes a difference. How you see people is oftentimes how they see you. And Cameron being very afraid of his father, this relationship of how you see somebody being how they see you exploded. The tension of the opposites, as Carl Jung would put it, came to a climax when they tried to roll the odometer back on the car, causing it to roll off of that cliff. That's the reason the garage was up in the sky. It rolled off and the car was crushed because he couldn't unify. I can't do this with my hands right now. He couldn't unify the opposites of the polarity, that tension that was happening between him and his figmental father. That's why we don't see the father in the movie, is because it's in Cameron's head. They didn't need to embody that person as a persona because it's a psychological portion of the movie. So the car, the Ferrari rolling off, is an explosion of what happens whenever you don't unify those opposites, and then that rubber band snaps. And at the end of the movie, once that rubber band has finally snapped, because oftentimes that in the movie, of course, would represent the dark night of the soul, he gains this wisdom. He gains this kind of smile for the first time in the movie. And even though he knows he's in trouble and that Ferrari's all fucked up, he's not afraid of his father anymore. And in fact, in a way, anticipates him coming home so that he can explain the whole thing to him with a smile on his face. Thus, for in that time, in that place, in that movie, becoming Ferris Bueller. That's why we don't see him again later in the movie. And
Uh, some more deeply abstract cinephile theories might even postulate that the entire film is one deep psychological trip, like a sort of daydream in the mind of a very sickly Cameron, still at home, still in bed at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, uh, who just wishing that he was Ferris Bueller. Yeah, but I don't like narrowing into that very confined perspective. dooming one to always be one and not the other, sort of rendering us to this inescapable fate of the meager sort of Edward Norton character from Fight Club, and that Tyler Durden or Ferris Bueller, these are just distant poetic notions in the cinema of the minds of the meager man. And I don't think this should be taken as the film's sort of central viewpoint. I don't think that this is where Hughes is coming from as a storyteller. I think Joey's interpretation is right up Hughes's alley. You know.
And then Ferris finally runs home where we have the iconic scene. He's trying to beat his parents home. And as he's running, and the dad's driving home, the mom's driving home, the sister's onto him, the principal's outside, all these obstacles, right? He's running home to beat all these things. And then running through someone's yard, he sees two women sunbathing and it runs past him. The camera freezes on the women, and then you see Ferris Bueller walk up. He says, "Hi, I'm Ferris. How you doing?" And that is another one of those perfect psychological moments where you have to stop and smell the flowers, no matter what kind of hurry you're in, no matter what job you're doing, no matter how big your task is, no matter how much stress you have, how many bills are coming in, or what's going on in your life at any given point. No matter how much of a rush you're in to get to your goal, you got to stop and smell the flowers every once in a while. So he stopped and talked to those girls for just a moment and made it home just in time to get in bed, where his parents, who are now personified by the characters in the beginning of the movie, kiss him on the forehead, and everything works out fine for him as the Cameron portion of his psyche has dissolved. Now, we have to remember that Ferris Bueller does not necessarily exist throughout this movie, objectively speaking, any more than Cameron does, because the movie is 100% about you. The girl in the movie is an expression of your desires, and Cameron is an expression of how you face obstacles and fears in the incorrect way when you don't trust the universe. However, Ferris's actions throughout the movie, including calling the principal under a pseudonym of a different voice, he takes on that prankster archetype in such a way that he has unified those opposites. He doesn't have a care in the world, and he trusts the universe that, like on the float, on the parade float, when he falls backwards, the universe will catch him. And he's not worried about getting caught by anybody doing anything bad. But because of that, he's a good person and he means well, but he's got mischief over here. He makes prank phone calls, right? He skips school. He sees through the bullshit, but at the same time, he never does anyone any harm either. He's got a good heart. So he doesn't lean all the way over here to where that rubber band's going to snap. And he doesn't, like Cameron, lean all the way over here where he's afraid of his father and he's worried about the relationship troubles and getting sick. He plays this prankster character, thus making that unification of opposites.
So yeah, yet again a lot to unpack. He he unfolds his gnosis with the same rapidity here as he does in his usual videos. It's quite interesting. Without any editing. uh um yeah, this bit about getting caught up in the everyday hustle and bustle, the typical everyman rush that we all are consumed with at some point in our lives. Uh, to drop that role, to drop that mask, and to stop that, when the flowers are there, when the fragrance of those flowers avail itself to us, against our momentum, our continuous rush train, we're always on, excuse me. When one of those stops along the way is the fragrance to smell. To stop and give it our attention is precisely the point, right? Because that it's those women, right, that Ferris stops to pay attention to, who might represent Shakti energy. Yeah, it's a very, sexualized moment, obviously, and that might represent Shakti at this point. The serpent, which climbs up and down the spine, acknowledged by yogic sciences as Kundalini, and acknowledged by neuroscience as the autonomic arousal system. You would almost sit next to this image, an image of Ferris sitting in lotus position, meditating, convulsing, and moaning in yogic ecstasy, right? Because I mean, it's equivalent. Stopping to acknowledge the fragrance. It's the film's cinematic overlay. The idea of being hit by a Kundalini sort of dose spike in your system, almost as if against your will, because it does bestow itself upon us at times. Um, but the film does show that it sort of requires our intention to give attention to that girl, to the woman, to that Shakti energy. Uh, when it's there, when we feel it, when that fragrance avails itself, right? It's all the same. It's all the same thing here. It's what the film is asking of us to do. By the way, by way of Paris, he's the vehicle for this, and the film giving this to him, to us, is the reward we get for being that fragrance for everyone else. And, it's him receiving back what he has given. For all he does, for all of his scheming, it allows others to stop and take off their masks, to get off their momentous train and smell that fragrance that life has to offer. Uh, and now it's his turn. Now he gets that chance. And you might say again, that it was embodied in that moment where he was singing the Beatles on the floaters. That's where it's sort of fully embodied. And our propensity to stop, not just to see beauty when it presents itself, and not just to smell fragrance when it avails itself, but to become that fragrance for others. This ultimately is what yoga is, but the experience of union, which I speak from both experientially and intellectually, perhaps one more so than the other. It's something of a process of becoming. It's not so much an event that the film is telling us we can reach this event that would be the culmination point, previously mentioned, or the culmination points previously mentioned. It's not like they constellate together to create this sort of, philosopher's stone that you would call Ferris Bueller himself, which is a sort of, destination point to arrive at. No, it's you are it already, and you are this organic process of becoming that fragrance and then offering it to others. Yeah, and it does require awareness to even acknowledge that there is something there. And remember, Ferris starts the film already aware that light is on and shining.
It's available to him to be able to be his true self, knowing that if he is his true self, he can pretty much do whatever he wants in life as long as he trusts the universe. And the only way you can trust the universe is if you are 100% yourself with with that unification of the opposites in balance. That means to shed the mask, the persona that you might be putting on, as Cameron does oftentimes throughout the movie, and letting your true intentions come forward to those who you trust. And of course, as it would show towards the end of the movie, Even if you can trust nobody else, as long as you can trust yourself to your devices, that's all you need. Because when you do your work and you do your work honestly, as Jung put it, the others come to you. As you saw in the movie, as there was billboards put up for Cameron and people making phone calls, and everybody was out to do great things for him, a prankster, to do great things for a prankster, because what he was doing as his
Oh, I want to actually, this kind of brings to mind, and I want to break down here a little bit of what he said. Yeah, when he's talking about leaning too far one way or the other, it reminds me of the film Waking Life by Richard Linklater, which, if you're into films that get into like the esoteric uh, and the mystical, Waking Life is a choice film for those up and coming movie buffs listening right now. Yeah, definitely check that one out. So there's this group of kids walking along, and so this is a slight spoiler alert, right? Honestly, the nature of this movie is such it really can't be spoiled. This is a uh, what would you say? Not spoiler free, but like it's anti spoiler. It just can't happen. All right, so you have this group of kids walking along, discussing the nature of the pedantic, right? And the intellectualist, with his sort of being a walking, talking copy machine, printing out existing notions, perspectives, ideas on the constant. Um, when they're all thoughts that have already been postulated, right? And so these kids, they're all thought, no action, and will never realize what they intellectualize, right? So they walk by an old man atop a telephone pole, and they ask him what he's on about. Yeah. Uh, if he needs a hand or anything, and he just goes, "No, I think I'm all right," something to that effect. And the youths proceed to walk along and remark something like, "Old fool, he's all action and no thought, but no better than us. We're all thought and no action." So yeah, Ferris being this trickster angel, right? He and definitely not a trickster demon, because there's no malicious intent or outcome as a result of his scheming. But he's the one who swings you left when you're a bit too right, and he swings you right when you're a bit too left, and he brings you down if you're a bit too high, and raises you up when you're a bit too low, to swing you back and forth between radical opposites, between extremes, until you reach a proper center, is sort of what the trickster does best. So that's just what he does.
was an art form captured in the movie. And so this rant has been brought to you by Leslie M84. Thank you for joining the community. Thank you for the $10 super thanks. Anytime somebody wants to throw down $10, that's easily on thriftbooks.com. That's a new book for me. So if you got a question or something I didn't fully envelop in a video, feel free to let me know. But that is my little breakdown for Leslie on Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And I appreciate your time, guys. See ya.
Uh, I feel like I should stress this too. The nature of archetype, as illustrated and assumed by characters in a cinematic sandbox, it's quite often in films that you can replace the audience with the main character, so to speak, um, and say that it's really just you or me. But what oftentimes I feel is left out of the final analysis is that every damn archetype presented in the story is potentially you or me. Every archetype. You know, whether it's the wise old man, the visionary mystic, or a blend of the two, which is, you know, quite often the case. The devouring mother, the tyrant, the the fool, which would be Cameron in this case, right? Or the Joker, which in a sense would be Ferris in this case, yeah. They're all potentially you, right? Depending on the context of you at any given moment with relationship to the film. You know, the most recent, more nuanced archetype to emerge in modern times in modern cinema is the integrated shadow self. Uh, all of these archetypes are deeply emphasized nowadays, and again, you know, often blended together. And in a lot of the older films, even if it was a huge cinematic staple, like say Star Wars, they weren't bankrupt of that Campbellian mythos that gave for a great hero's journey, where certain archetypes, such as like the visionary mystic, who brings the coming of age hero into the unknown world for the first time, right? Like Obi-Wan and Luke Skywalker, or Hagrid and Harry Potter, or Merlin and Prince Arthur, or Gandalf and Frodo. You know, these are all essentially the same story told under different skins. As Joey actually had just said in his absolutely brilliant dialogue with Eric P. Anthony, if you haven't seen that yet, you know, you should head over to the channel and check that out because, you know, that was an absolutely amazing dialogue. But he's not wrong about well, I mean, he's absolutely right about, you know, the presence of archetype in our world as a sort of collective unconscious that we tap into. In my opinion, you know, this is absolutely correct and experiential to all of us. Whether it's a filmmaker who's well versed on the Campbellian literary, you know, sensibility of universal archetype and in mythos or not, uh, people are gonna tap into that even if unconsciously, right? Which is why at the end of a play, as old Uncle Watts would say, all actors on a stage come out hand in hand to bow together at once as a single body. I am your host, Lippin, and thank you for listening. Now, I wanted to want to go through some of the comments here, both the live comments as well as the written comments here at the bottom. Uh, oh, we have Zeralath Immortal came right in. Truth is natural law. A lot of familiar. There's Krigon. I'm here. I made it. Bathroom. Hey y'all. um, by the end of the video, this is all that was said in here, I guess. uh, I like how Cameron acted sick to hide from the world, and Ferris acted sick to enjoy it. Yep, that's absolutely right. That those are the flip side, diametrical opposites of the same person that each of us can be, right? Like he was saying. Uh, yeah, yeah. People shouldn't believe in isms; they should believe in themselves. Absolutely. Once you learn these principles, you realize all is mind, and it reflects in near all aspects of our lives, movie scripts included. I really like this comment a lot because you know he's absolutely right, and this is just another way of saying of what I was saying about pretty much every character in a story. It can be you. They all potentially represent you, some aspect of you, that is lingering in there waiting to be realized by way of some folding story of your journey as a hero. Being that the Campbellian notion of underlying unconscious archetypal substrate is a real world aspect of the human condition. It's not just a quality of fictional storytelling, right? Which is why when he says here, all is mind, this is not just some wishy-washy sort of, new age bullshit that managed to find its way into a Ferris Bueller analysis video like What Tends to Happen or anything like that. This is particularly relevant to the final analysis, right? And it's those sort of correlations that come together between all of these comments by different people, independent of each other. I mean, it's amazing that everybody, without even knowing each other, we're all just already. I'm gonna admit right now that before Joey's analysis of the film, this had never really occurred to me this deeply, anyways. I mean, because when you're familiar with Joseph Campbell, when you're familiar with seeing any literary, what would you say, artifice of expression by which a person is trying to get across their notion of the nature of things, yeah. Once you're able to have a grasp of the basic underlying framework, those schools that school of thought has to offer, these concepts, these notions that Joey's sort of coming at in the final analysis of things, really is quite readily available, apparently observable to the common mind. It does not take somebody of a Shakespearean level of literary competency to see what's sort of being conjured about in all of our most popular stories of the modern time. So, someone here suggests The Last Battlefield original Star Trek, suggesting it for its emphasis on Jungian thought. So that's pretty interesting. Yeah, you're gonna get a lot of people who are here because of film analysis with psychology and philosophy, right? And perhaps their own gnosis. Reviewing the video's sort of post or pre-commentary ordeal, as well as what was going on in the live chat at the time. To take a fictional story that never happened and derive a sort of essential truth from it that is applicable to anybody, to all of us. And in that way, Ferris Bueller transcends the screen, transcends celluloid film on which his hero's journey is even able to unfold. It transcends that and comes from a place that is not just descriptive, but definitive of the human experience.